Welcome to Medicine. I'm Dr. Othniel Doolittle, here to discuss how you can make a good decision about what career as an ER doc your employer is going to be. And this might be for a short time or for a longer time, but what are those options? There are sometimes CMGs that have made it into national headlines, especially recently. The headlines about private equity groups or venture capitalists not always looking great when they are running ERs. What are the other options? I want you to be able to make an informed decision and know what the options are. I am a medical staffing company owner, but I want this to be as neutral as possible, and I'm not a used car salesman. I don't believe that there's a one-size-fits-all, and sometimes you're limited by just your region, where your home is, where your family are. You only have a certain type of employment option available at the places closest to you. What are the pros and cons? I want to talk through what those are for each of the different employment types that you may be seeking out as an ER doc. What are they? You have your corporate medical groups, as mentioned. You have small democratic groups or large democratic groups. And you have staffing companies. There's a few different varieties of those. You have directly employed with the hospital, and you have locums companies. So there's a few different pathways you can go down, and how do you know what's best for you? And it might be different best things based on your particular moment, where you're at, where your family needs you, what you need to make, etc. So let's run through some pros and cons, and then I'll summarize. Corporate medical groups sometimes do get a bad rap, but they do own the majority of the market share of ER employment. The great thing about them is that they do offer large sign-on bonuses. There's a lot of different hospitals you can work at, and they bring a lot of buying power when it comes to insurance like med-mal and health insurance, and that can be really beneficial. Sometimes they do fold. There have been some difficulties with billing or some issues that have resulted in them not paying med-mal. There were a couple bankruptcies recently, but that can happen in any industry. Even though they were vilified a little bit because of those events in the past couple of years, that's mainly because it affected a large number of people per se. You see bad behavior in any employer, almost across the board, any of the employer types. The great thing about CMGs too is that you have a lot of different leadership potential that you can grow into. There are options for buying into the company as well. And again, they span a large area of the market. You have small democratic groups, sometimes kind of held up as the ideal way for an ER doctor to practice. It is great for doctors who do want to be very involved on shift and off shift in the inner workings of the finances of the group, checking in on law changes for their state, working with the hospital directly, making the hiring and firing decisions as a group. Some people function very well in that group of all having a vote. Once you get a little larger though, talking with some of these democratic groups, it does get a little difficult. It's like being in a large HOA, and you may really enjoy being in a huge HOA and being involved on and off the clock with your group. You do get paid more with these groups because it's a model where you're making money based on the one or couple contracts that you have. There's no large system buffer. You have directly employed by hospitals. When that happens, you're employed just like the nurses are employed. So you have that direct contact with administration. You're not talking to a middle person as far as leadership. And you have a different kind of buy-in as a hospital employee. Sometimes the rates aren't quite as good either there, just because of the way that it's a single system and at times a smaller entity, but at sometimes a larger academic center, if they don't have ways to fund the ER in an extra way, then your base salary can be a little bit less. SDGs and CMGs, you can make a little bit more money, but you are open to more market variability. So if there's a Change Healthcare hack, COVID, things like that can disrupt how funds are coming to a hospital, coming to your employer, and can alter your income month to month. You have staffing companies. There are good ones and bad ones, ones that are out there and act very much like a private equity group and have caused problems taking money, withholding money. If you're only in it for the money, then that master will be the only one that you please and not the people. There are other staffing companies that very much focus on the people, relationships, and doing what's best for their providers, for their physicians who are working in the ER, and for their partners at the hospital. And then you have locums. So locums companies allow you to have a lot of flexibility with your own schedule and usually much higher rates. You do travel quite a bit more, and you don't have necessarily that long-term relationship with a hospital. You may have a few month contract or a year contract, but it's not like you've been at one hospital for 10 years building relationships with those nurses. Great for some people. So I've heard stories over the years, and people will call and talk about some of the problems that they've seen. And there's problems with all the different kinds of employer types. CMGs who promise one thing in a contract and then demand more, or they want their $100,000 sign-on bonus back. Getting a $100,000 sign-on bonus is pretty amazing. But it needs to be at the right time in your career when you can have that flexibility. They might tell you you're contracted for 12 shifts and then they schedule you for 18 and want their money back if you don't uphold those 18. You're a little bit more of a number. You're a cog in the machine in some ways. Can be great for making bank if you don't have a lot of commitments to family or friends at that time in your career. It's a very solid option. Locums is similar in that way. You can be put in places that are really difficult. Sometimes that's a lot of fun, walking into a hospital that has many challenges to overcome, staff challenges, transfer challenges, equipment issues. But that can be really fun to figure those out and to be paid well to do that. You have some problems with staffing companies where they've not, just like some of the CMGs, kept their med-mal tail going. And that's always a challenge because when they go bankrupt or they stop having a contract, sometimes the physicians are left holding that payment for tail, which is why occurrence-based would be probably the ideal option. Then you have your small democratic groups that can work amazingly well. When you have a small group of friends that are all working together, again, you have a little bit more market variability in the income that you're making because if volumes go down, the amount of RVUs or the patient encounters also is going to decrease as well. It's amazing to have every physician who really wants to be involved in all of the aspects of recruiting and HR and legal, finance, etc. For those docs that aren't looking for that amount of involvement, which is definitely not everybody, then some of the other options are great. Staffing companies and CMGs take care of those things for you so that you don't have to be focused on that. And directly employed with the hospital the same way. They have their own HR and legal, and you get to function just within that system. So wherever you are in your career, as you're making a decision, I hope you can make an informed decision about what brings you enjoyment, keeps you from being burned out, keeps you coming back to the bedside, enjoying what you do, saving lives, and making a difference for people who are coming in hurting or sick or just worried, and they need you to enjoy the work that you do. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, contradictions, stories that you'd like to discuss. And best of luck as you try to make these decisions and navigate healthcare. Thank you very much. I'm Othniel Doolittle with Welcome to Medicine.